Nice to see you all here. Wow, this is a first. We actually had to carry in more chairs. We ran out of chairs because so many people turned up. So give yourself a big round of applause. Thank you. So welcome to Henley Business School's new Cape Town campus. We newly opened and ready for business, open for business, and hoping to see you all a lot more. Super happy that we have this amazing event tonight, and I have to say thanks to Monday and Kuru from the BMF, who have been such amazing partners in putting this together tonight. And we're going to see this as a start of an ongoing series of collaborative events. So I'm very excited about that, both in Johannesburg and in Cape Town. A little bit of context, if you don't know the school, Henley Business School is a truly international business school. It's got a strong UK signature, but it's a global entity. We have campuses all over the world, and we have a big, thriving campus in Johannesburg. It's the first business school to be quadruple accredited in South Africa, and the Henley MBA, the executive MBA, has been ranked as the top MBA in South Africa, and Henley are the top players in executive education by the rankings in South Africa as well. So it's the business in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, is growing. It's seen really significant growth under the leadership of our dean, John Foster Pedley, who I'm going to introduce to you in a second. What we want to do in Cape Town is have the same impact that we've had in Gauteng, and that's to close the learning gap, create brilliant leaders, and if I can quote the Henley Africa purpose statement, we build the people who build the businesses that build Africa. So that's the intention of the school, and we're hoping to get the same sort of activity here in the Western Cape as we've had in Gauteng. So if anybody wants any more detail or any info, please tap me or my colleague Iman's shoulder, and we'll be happy to have a chat to you before you leave this evening if you want any kind of details. Iman's over there. Okay, well, without any further ado, what I'd like to do is introduce you to our Africa Dean, John Foster Pedley, who's currently in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and he's going to join us via Zoom to give you a real warm Henley Africa welcome. So, John, if you're there, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Barry. It's absolutely wonderful. I remember watching you playing drums with Johnny Clegg for so many gigs, and look at you now. Actually running a business. Fantastic. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you all here, both online and in Cape Town, and I hope we're going to do this in Joburg as well. So Monde, thank you very much. Monde Lobu, Managing Director of BMF, a Henley alumnus and a good friend. Thank you very much for doing this. Professor Julie Madansela, what an absolute honor it is to have you here. And I hope we can lure you to out of the Cape up to Joburg one time as well. I'm looking forward to hearing Patrick Kulati. Thank you very much, from Good Governance Africa. Everything else stand up from Wesgro. And all the people who are here. I looked at the audience earlier, I saw so many people that I know. So it's wonderful you've turned up. I've got a few words to say. We've been through an election. And we're waiting on tenterhooks to see what's going to happen next. Whatever happens next, we're going to have to manage it. And as a business school with the same statement you can see behind me, we build the people who build the businesses to build Africa. We are really dedicated to giving the sort of ethical leadership, the skills, the capabilities, the confidence, especially the confidence to actually build our businesses. I do think we tend to look outside and wonder if we are as good as that lot in the States, whatever. I can tell you from our results on our MBA, which is done blind tested with loads of British executives, Germans, Scandinavians, and Asian, that the South Africans do as well, if not better, than all of those in blind assessments on our MBA. So we've got all the talent we want in South Africa, and I really hope that we're going to be able to continue to develop that case for people in South Africa, and also that we'll be able to build more and more of this sort of really compelling thought leadership and the wild voices, experienced voices we're going to hear now. And I hope we're going to have a great session. I so wish I could be there with you. You haven't come here to listen to me, so I'm going to bow out very quickly. And with my thanks, I'm going to hand over to Monde Lovu. So Monde, over to you. Thank you very much for listening, folks.
This one and this one. Okay, I think this one's got more life right now. So Monde, welcome. Monde is a Hindi MBA alumnus and the head of our amazing Johannesburg chapter. Just as an aside, and also of course the managing director of the BMF. So Monde, welcome to your campus.
Thank you very much, Barry. This all right. Thank you very much, Barry. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, it could be better than that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Thank you very much. It is a great pleasure and privilege to be here with you and all the guests. Protocol must be observed as well as doing the BMF. So first, I would like to welcome the acting president of the BMF, Meli Moabi, who's amongst us, and shortly she will give a BMF message. And I also want to acknowledge the Western Cape chairperson, Sis Kanyo, and who's also with us here as well, and some of the leadership of the BMF in the Western Cape, and also the Henley alumni team, Namodese, Barry, etc., that we work with as well at Henley Business School, and also from the head office at BMF, welcome Kwame as well, who's been a great assistance in terms of coordinating and working together on ensuring that this event comes to pass. And definitely last but not least, we also welcome, we'll do it again, but we welcome all our panelists. We've got Professor Martin Settler, who's online, Ms. Standard, who's here with us as well, and we've got Mr. Kulati as well with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're really hoping for a good engagement, and of course, I'll get out of the way as a facilitator so that they can share with us their views about the current state of the country and why this conversation is critical at this point in time. Many of us were shocked about, the results, etc. Many postulations, etc. But this is where we are, and what is in the role of business leaders and professionals, and in particular, what will be the role of the BMF and Henley as well, and the role of Good Governance Africa, and the role of Stellenbosch University, which is present here, and the role of Wesco, because all of these particular stakeholders have been brought together, not of a figment of our imagination, but they were carefully considered as to why they are here. So we're not just here to talk, ladies and gentlemen, but we really would like to probably build consensus, build ideas that we can implement and action collectively as the stakeholders represented here. We're not just doing another event as we usually do in this country, because this country is definitely in a change mode. So we also need to think that way. So really are looking forward to the ideas that will come out of the conversation. Without wasting any more time, I would like to call on the acting president of the BMF to give us a BMF message and input as we kickstart our conversation. Please welcome them, Rabi.
Good evening. Are you well? Cape Town is closed. That's the one thing I can definitely say. And with excitement, we are here for leading beyond the ballot. When we got together and we were brainstorming around the theme, we were asking ourselves a lot of questions to say, what do we want to get out of this session? What kind of input do we want the people to give us? Because it's quite evident that you went to the press and your voice is quite clear of which direction you want this country to go. But how do we get there? So without wasting further time, thank you, MD. I want to welcome you all to Leading Beyond the Ballot. Must we change some height?
Use this better. That's a good speak.
Better.
Speak.
Better.
Get us more.
Those in the front can hear me. All right. So Leading Beyond the Ballot, shaping South Africa's post-election future is what the conversation is about today. But firstly, as the BMF, it is important that we congratulate all the political parties on the outcomes of the elections. And just like everybody else, we are appealing that going forward, the negotiations and the talks that are going on behind the scenes as possible coalition government. I can't get myself to say it because it's new, it's unique. It's terms that have never been used at the same time, coalition government South Africa. So it's still a challenge for us to get used to it. But today's event is to discuss how important is this coalition government. But as the BMF, we are very passionate about empowerment and transformation. So this is the opportunity for us to discuss how do we want this government to carry on the transformation agenda and empowerment. For all South Africans, not only certain ones, for everybody who took the opportunity to come and vote. So I want to welcome you all and thank you, Yengi, so much for assisting us and working with us to make this event a success. And to the panelists, we need your input today. We need your analysis, and to the members, this is an opportunity for us to discuss important issues that affect South Africa. So I'm hoping that we are going to have a great discussion and everybody is going to participate. And at the end of this event, we know that we will have an input on the shape and the direction of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wabi. Okay. Right. I'd like to take this time now to welcome onto the stage our distinguished panelists, and I will start with Professor Madonsela, who does not necessarily need an introduction because she's definitely a household name. But one thing we'd like to just highlight about her, she's got a particular relationship with the BMF, very warm relationship with the BMF over the years. She's a friend of the BMF, and we're truly grateful for her taking the time out of the busy schedule. I'm sure you've seen her commentary throughout the week around these issues, and of course tonight we are particularly interested to what she has to say to us as professionals and business leaders in South Africa today. So ladies and gentlemen, the former public protector, please welcome Professor Madonsela online. Can you please give her a round of applause? And our second panelist, which I'll ask them to come and take a seat, Ms. Stander, who is the CEO of Westgrow. Again, there's also a good relationship with Westgrow. I know in the Western Cape, the BMF deployed its members to be part of the board of Westgrow, and I think the CFO as well is a member of the BMF. So there is a particular relationship again with Westgrow. We are grateful for your time and we look forward to your input, Ms. Stander. Can you please give a round of applause? Mr. Patrick Kulate, he's the CEO of Good Governance Africa, of Southern Africa, and they particularly focus on governance issues, and they've recently launched a governance index, performance index, and I'm sure you'll tell us all about that as well in terms of its application, etc. And he's also here as well to get questions and input around what the role has been of Good Governance Africa. And of course, we're growing a relationship with the association as well, through the BMF, and we are grateful for your time this evening, and I look forward to your input, Dr. Kulat. Thank you very much. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do, there's about four key topics, and of course there's others as well. We know that we don't have a lot of time, but what we want to do is we're going to allow the panelists to give us their high-level input, and they can take between 5 to 10 minutes, so it will give them space to breathe before we get into anything else, but give them 5 to 10 minutes so that they can express themselves around the current situation and their input. But just the 4 areas which are of particular interest generally tonight, which I'd like all of us to be thinking about. Number 1 is the economic implications of a coalition government. Understanding how the political landscape may shape the economy and business environment. That's the first part. Number 2, challenges and opportunities for professional managers and leaders, exploring the evolving landscape and its impact on leadership roles. So that one comes into play also because of the mandate of the BMF, which is about the development of managerial leadership. So that part will always be there in our engagements. Number 3, how then do we navigate uncertainty? What are the personal strategies for leaders to navigate the uncertainty that we find ourselves in, and even potential uncertainty in the next coming months or so? And then the last portion, what is the role of business in upholding democracy? So how do we examine how businesses can contribute to advancing the gains of our hard-won democracy? So those are the 4 key areas that we'll be getting input from. And as you think through, as we think together, you're more than welcome, and we'll get to the Q&A part as well. So without wasting any more time, we'll start with Professor Madonsela online for her input, so that she can lay the ground in terms of her perspective on leading beyond the ballot. Prof. Madonsela, over to you.
Greetings. Okay. I think can I have permission to use a video, please? Okay, thank you. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay, sorry guys. Thank you for this privilege to BMF and Henley Business School for the opportunity to address this amazing event. And just thank you for the foresight to get intellectuals to begin to talk about these matters. People think politics are for politicians, but I think politics are for everyone, because whatever happens will affect me and you. And in any event, if we don't engage, we will not be able to lend our politicians our ideas. They don't have to take our ideas, but at least we give them what we think might be helpful. I have chosen to combine what you've asked me to talk about, sir, with my work here at Stellenbosch University, which is work on social justice.
Well,
and therefore I'm talking about social justice leadership factors in leading beyond the ballot. In so doing, I will talk a bit about good governance and ethics. Just firstly to say, what has happened in the last few days has been paradoxically predictable, yet unpredictable. And to that extent, organizations such as Stellenbosch University, Henley Business School, GIPS, and everyone need to work more closely with politicians around scenario planning. because, as I said, it was both predictable and unpredictable. What was predictable was that the ANC might lose the election, or at least might lose the majority, and there was a huge possibility of a coalition government. And last year in August already, we started talking about those possibilities. The second thing, what was not predictable was that the main factor, if not the sole factor behind the ANC's vote shedding, as some have called it, would be an internal split, where one of its former presidents walks away with the deciding votes. If you look at the election results, you will realize that the ANC lost about 17 percentage points. Of those points, 15 percentage points are accounted for by a party formed by its former president, taking the identity of the ANC's disbanded military wing, Umkhonto weSizwe, known as MK, and the rest are accounted for by political parties. So in some way, we're having the best of times, if I were to borrow from Charles Dickens, and also the worst of times. The best of times is that this gives us an opportunity for a values reset, rethinking leadership, and rethinking leadership for good governance. A difficult challenge are the uncertainties that our colleague Monde has spoken about. And thirdly, South Africa cannot afford a future of too much uncertainty. Well, the markets don't like too much uncertainty. They do operate with uncertainties because to invest is to bet on uncertainties, but they normally just want contained uncertainties. But here's what's not in the public domain, is that the people of this country have suffered for too long. If we don't make meaningful progress on poverty and equality, which would incorporate employment and income security, we are going to be in trouble. And I've been saying this since 2016 in writing, because when unattended, these become fertile ground for radicalization or extremism, rampant crime, including corruption, and further social fracture in a country where these are already key political challenges. So just before I quickly deal with what do we do then going forward with good governance, I want to indicate to you that two things happened to me and my colleagues before we did this. Firstly, I did some scenarios without using an algorithm. I am a trained scenario practitioner, and I was trained during those days before there were algorithms, so we could just look at trends. And I had come up with 4 scenarios at the time. And these scenarios, sort of one of them has more or less possibly panned out, or its possibility is quite strong now. So the 4 scenarios were, the first scenario was a scenario where we had a limping or a bruised or limping ANC. So bruised or limping would be an ANC that still has 50 plus 1% or at least 49 point something like it did in the Northern Cape. And it would be able to govern humbled, and it would be able to do better on corruption because it has realized that it nearly lost. For me, that was my best case scenario when I addressed the banking industry in Namibia. And the second, at the time, in a very weird way, I thought the DA were the second best case scenario. The second person, a DA and ANC marriage. So that was for me an uncomfortable co-pilots, because it would have been a very difficult relationship, but I thought it would work. The worst case scenario for me was a scenario that brought back state capture. So my own view was any relationship that brings in MK party would bring back state capture. And the last scenario was the MPC, which I thought that would be social justice shot out scenario, simply because of their aversion to social justice, traditional or classical social justice, things like employment rights, which have been the focus of social justice since 1919, when the Treaty of Versailles highlighted social justice as the reason why we had the First World War and established the ILO to make sure that there's social justice between labor and capital. So I was also concerned that they showed no interest in social support, which is the grant. Again, it is not a solution to people being given livelihoods, whether it's unemployment or whether it's employment or working for themselves or subsistence farming. You know, there's so many options of livelihoods that people don't think about when they say jobs and jobs and jobs. So I was worried about that. But initially I thought this was worth a shot. But after the second thing we did was we looked at political party manifestos against the Bill of Rights. We did 30 days of democracy dialogues where people told us what they thought about the Bill of Rights, the preamble, which includes social justice, the values, which include the achievement of equality, and then the rest of the Bill of Rights, which includes administrative law and everything. And we ended up with people giving us 8 concerns that we were concerned about. And these ranged from land rights and housing to issues such as crime and criminality, GPV and the courts, actually, the handling of courts of crime and criminality, and people concerned about equality, people concerned about economic inclusion, etc. Based on that, then I was now concerned about what's going to happen from if the ANC and the DA got married. Just rightly to just mention very strictly, it was land, housing and related rights, migration, economic inclusion and parity, equality in all areas of life, including parity of esteem, social security, including the SRD grant, human dignity, education, access to justice, particularly regarding GBV and other violent crimes, health services, and equitable distribution of community infrastructure. And then we measured 8 of these parties against that, and we found some of them wanting. And of course, there were those that we found wanting for extremism, wanting, for example, expropriation of land without compensation. But with the EFF, it was interesting because our finding was that the EFF says to do that, it will change the Constitution. So it's not just saying it's going to ride roughshod over the Constitution. It will change the Constitution, which means it needs a 2/3 majority, which is not likely to happen. And we were concerned, of course, we didn't evaluate MK Party because having chosen a parliamentary democracy, then it meant there'll be no Bill of Rights and there would be no ability for you and me to challenge them in court when our human rights have been violated. So progress, such as we've had, for example, HIV medication through the TAC cases, social security being extended to domestic workers, etc., would not be possible under MK Party because of parliamentary supremacy. So we left them alone. Little did we know that they will end up being the wild card that changes everything. So where we are now, we are really in the scenario of, we're in a place where all possible scenarios are there except the moonshot one, because they got less than 30% as a moonshot. So that scenario is totally out of question. In terms of good governance, I did say we are having the worst of times and the best of times, borrowing from Charles Dickens. What is the best of times is that the only thing that binds us now is the Constitution. Nobody is a majority. Yes, the ANC has most of the votes, but And there's so many discrepancies in terms of what parties want to prioritize. So my view would be what needs to be prioritized is the Constitution. Then the 8 principles of good governance is propounded by the United Nations. And one of those principles is equality. But another is decision-making by consensus. I'm not mentioning all of them, but the ones that are crucial here would be equity or equality. And then the other one is decision-making by consensus. So what does this mean for growth and opportunity and navigating uncertainty? From us at Stellenbosch University and the Tuma Foundation, we offer a particular kind of leadership that without that leadership, we don't think they're going to make it. They will need to lead in a manner that is ethical, purpose-driven, impact-conscious, and committed to serve. And on the ethics, they have to decide up front what will be the values that bind them. And I suggest that they start with Section 1 of the Constitution, Section 195 of the Constitution, and those who are in the executive should aid Section 96 and 136. They should also add the value of Ubuntu, which here the BMF is very passionate about Ubuntu, because Ubuntu is understanding that really we are interconnected as human beings, and we're interconnected with the rest of the world and with our environment. If I help you, I'm helping myself. If I harm you, I harm myself. But also Ubuntu tells us that we all have equal value, as the judges said in S versus Makwanyo. And that equal value will require us to respect the Constitution, to respect the value of the achievement of equality. And I've got stats here that my team prepared. I can share with them later. That just shows that we're not yet equal. On land, for example, Africans own, according to the last data, they own only 4% of rural land. And that can't be right. We can't have people say that that can be remedied by giving people their ownership certificates to their cuckoos or their shacks or their 4-roomed houses. That's good, but that's not always good, because if all you own is a home and you don't have any livelihood, the first thing that's going to go away are homes. So one of the anger points in this province where I am is gentrification, where people are losing their homes because the rates are going higher without improvements to the properties, but they're going higher because other people are able to buy, and people are losing their homes. So if you're not helping people with livelihoods and giving them, making sure that they own their home and it's properly certified is good, but it is not enough. So lastly, just to say, we are going through, paradoxically, the best of times and the worst of times. But the good thing is it's an opportunity for a values reset. And another good thing is that values reset does not mean that we should come up with anything new. The Constitution already gives us the values that should bound us, and that include the values that underpin Ubuntu. And when it comes to leadership, we do need confident leadership. And President Ramaphosa, at least according to Harvard University, or according to one of the Harvard professors, Professor Rosabeth Moss-Kanter, is one of those confident leaders that can negotiate with others in a way that embraces their humanity and treats them as equals. He's a person that can make sure that everyone feels heard, everyone's contribution is valued. I hope he remembers being able to do that, because then maybe he is just our hope. Thank you.
Scenario planning, I think there's a great opportunity there for great collaboration in terms of going forward, how we can look at scenario planning as the organization. And the value set is also another critical point of discussion. How do we then have a values reset, etc. Quite interesting views about the parliamentary democracy, etc. But yeah, some key things there that we will come back to. But let me, like I said, I must get out of the way. So, Tata Kulati, your opening remarks and your reflections about where we are, especially on those 4 points that I started with. Over to you, sir.
Can you hear me? All right. Good evening, everyone. Excuse me, I used to be a teacher. So, so as teachers, we like to move around a little bit. I hope you bear with me. I'd just like to acknowledge the professor, like acknowledge everyone who is here, the leadership of Hanley and the PMF, two organizations that have paved the way for the development of leadership in this continent, and particularly in South Africa. And I'd like to appreciate the invitation and to appreciate being part of this panel. I want to do two things. Tell two stories and then raise some questions. I think Professor Madonsela and I seem to have been in the same room, at least thinking about what to say today. Firstly, I was with her on ENCA earlier. Today we're here. Next week I'm going to be back in Stellenbosch with her again. So, and it sounds like we shared some thoughts along the way, although we've never met. So, I was asked a few weeks ago to speak at an anti-corruption conference, which Good Governance Africa held together with the African Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions, as well as other organizations. And in that keynote address that I was giving, I used a metaphor which I'd like to start off with, or an analogy. That's the first story, to make a point. Good to see my friends here, by the way. Yeah. One of the things that I enjoy doing is to watch nature documentaries. So one day I was watching one of those nature documentaries, and there was this herd of buffalo gallivanting and running in the wild, and two animals were tracing them. In a choreographed kind of way, they were really trying to isolate one of these buffalo that were running, and fortunately for them, they managed to track one and isolate him to such an extent that the others left, and these two lions, the one held the buffalo by the throat, the other held the buffalo by the mouth. So neither could it breathe, nor could it shout and cry. It tried by all means to stand strong, but the power of these ferocious predators really was overwhelming. And it, for minutes, maybe 10 minutes, it stood still, fighting against the power of these wild lions. And ultimately, it gave up and it collapsed under this attack. So as they started to nibble, because they were also starting to rest, because now it was down, they thought they had him. And as they started to try and nibble, the herd that had gone turned around, and it came back. One of them gored one of the lions, and in no time, the lions ran away. I'm going to make a point soon, so bear with me. Both those lions ran away. And after some time, maybe a couple of seconds, the buffalo realized that the enemy had gone. It felt the air running through its body, and it started to stand up. Bruised, yes, bloodied, battered, but it still stood. It was wounded. It was, it had been tired, but it still stood, and it went and joined. As it did, it was limping. When I think of that, and I think of South Africa, and indeed the African continent, it has been traced, tracked, and attacked by two sets of lion-like enemies, right? The private sector and the public sector people in leadership. They have ransacked the public purse. They have done a lot of things if you look at the mining, if you look at everywhere, without investing anything into the country, such that the country, there were moments when this country almost looked like it was collapsing. But it had stood, battered, yes, bruised, yes, almost without breath, but it stood. And here we are today, election after election, with this democracy standing still, not because of anyone else, but because of the power and the voices of its people, because of the marches and the protests of ordinary people, because of the marches and the protests of business organizations and business leaders, but also because of the Chapter 9 institutions that stood against the onslaught of corruption and all the stuff that was happening. And so we ought to be thankful that we even had an election. And after that election, we had the governing party not even complaining, not even saying anything. We can blame them for anything, but for that, I give them credit. That they said we have been squarely just not been given the kind of majority that we wanted. We're now going to look for partners to partner with. We need to thank the fact that our democracy stood after this election. It still remains strong, resilient. And I think Professor Madonsela has talked about the power and the importance of the Constitution. Such that last Sunday, as I was thinking about and watching the TV, people talking, I started writing an article that evening. I couldn't sleep because I had these two ideas that I thought about. The first idea was there is a lesson for both politicians and for citizens out of this election. In fact, any election. The first lesson for politicians is that electoral popularity or electoral, yes, popularity has a price to pay. And then if you don't pay that price, people are going to come after you. I make an example in that article. I think it's going to be published, or it's published already by News 24. I make an example about two presidents. One was Prime Minister of Armenia, I just can't say his name. In 2018, that man was the darling of his people. He led, literally walked distances and overthrew the government democratically. He was lifted on the shoulders of people. Today, even last Sunday, there was an article in the Guardian newspaper that those very same people want him out of power. There's a price to pay for politicians when they don't deliver the mandate that the people want from them. The second illustration I make, it's about President Ramaphosa himself. Because remember Tumamina, the marches that all the walks that he did next to the beach, everywhere he went, people all over him, such that commentators talked about Ramaphosa, the effect that he had on people. But today, the very same people gave him 40%, far below even the capacity to be able to form a government. Politicians must never take people for granted. Then there's a second lesson for us as citizens, that now that we've participated in the elections, showing in marches into the night, into the cold, that we are concerned about the direction of our country. We are concerned about the democracy. We want this democracy to grow and we want it to stand strong. We went to the voting polls. Now it means, therefore, we must not disengage anymore. We must not leave the stage of engagement, because good governance, as the professor was saying, has 7 elements. One of those elements is participation. It is about accountability. It is transparency. It is things like ethical leadership. And so all those things are going to happen only as we as citizens stay engaged, make sure that we hold them to account, be active in parliament, be active when there are bills, businesses like business organizations like BMF. We need to stay engaged so that they know that they are accountable to all of us. Second story I want to say is around 2003. I looked much younger than now. A group of us, we're coming from various backgrounds. I was in environmental justice then, working at UCT at the Environmental Evaluation Unit. Other people were coming from engineering, others were coming from law. We even had the son of the man who established Orania. And people from the ANC, unions, DA, everyone, they were there. We were put together by the Africa Leadership Institute, the United Nations organization, as well as the University of Western Cape, to develop scenarios of how South Africa was likely to look in 2020. And so we sat all those years ago, looking at how this country could look like. And when the prof was talking about scenario planning, we were doing scenario plans. So those were non-fleur scenarios. Because we met in a farm, on a farm here in Stellenbosch. That farm was called Montfleur. The first group of people that were part of this scenario planning included people like Trevor Manuel, people like Sakima Tozo, Tito Mboweni, and others in 1992, as the country was leading to 1994. And so we were brought in 2002, 2003, because the country was going into 2004 elections to say, how do we see South Africa into the next, I don't know how many years. We came up with 4 scenarios. And I want to mention some of them quickly. And this is the report that came out of that scenario. You can still find it online. The first scenario was called a dead end. It was called a dead end. This explored the outcome, the possible outcome of a self-serving leadership, individualistic leaders, people that did not care as long as we can make it and we can be rich. We don't care about the rest of the people. Rampant individualism. The scenario paints a picture of South African malaise with individualism, high levels of corruption, and a slow pace of reform. So that was the first scenario that we came up with. We believe that that scenario would be the worst for the country. Then the second scenario was a slow punch, a slow puncher. All right, slow puncher. It's just like this, we explored the possible outcome of South Africa choosing to beat the same path rather than adopting a bold vision and decisive leadership to reduce inequality, and they preferred not to rock the boat. They're just going to. So as I read and as I mention all of these scenarios, you're going to find that South Africa has experienced bits and pieces of all of them, because we have indeed had experienced some of these problems. So this results in some sort of a country that is not going anywhere, that's actually dying, that's not growing economically. Poverty is not being addressed. People, young people are not inspired. Education is collapsing. All of those problems. It's a slow puncher. Did I say puncher? Puncture. It's at night. I think in Kosa this time. Then there is a sharp right turn. That was a third thing where the government says we're sick and tired of this thing. We're not going to care about social grants. We're not going to care about social development. We just want economic growth no matter what happens. We're going to go into the world. We want to be liked by the investors. We just want people to come here and build the mines and take the income and go, and we don't care about social development. Sharp turn to the right. The one that we all agreed that we thought was important. Now, let me say this before I say the last one that we liked. As South Africans, we don't seem to learn. Our leaders don't listen in order to learn. Many people have been saying things, scholars, people in the NGO sectors, communities have been saying a lot of things. Change direction, stop the corruption. Stop this crass individualism, this careless, I don't care attitude. Stop it.
Yeah.
And for those of us who are in business, who happen to drive the latest cars, and we drive into the townships that we grew up into, without the care of other people, people don't like that. They resent that kind of thing, especially when we don't invest and give back to those communities. And so the one that we really agreed on was, where is this now? I just forget. I thought I'd written it down here, but it doesn't seem that I had written it down, but I've got it here. It's called All Aboard the Dual Carriageway.
Yeah.
This one examined how South Africa as a country challenges its approach to growth and development and chooses a bold path to enable all to climb aboard this dual carriageway to a better life. This was not going to leave other people behind. So it needed a bold set of leadership. Prof was talking about Ubuntu. It needed these characteristics: a just society, Ubuntu, inclusive economy, social delivery, environment for creativity. These were the things that we agreed at the time, but unfortunately, no one listened to those. We did everything to popularize them. We even had a person of the ANC within that group called Phoebe Potgieter. We thought that because she's there, she was going to make it, but it was not taken up by any of those people. So as I sit down, I just want to make these points, and I'm going to take my seat. The outcomes of our election show a maturing democracy, and we need to give ourselves a round of applause for that as a country. This point was made very clear to me on Tuesday. I had a meeting with the Swiss ambassador. And because in Europe, this thing of coalition is new, is old. He just said to me, you don't need to be worried. This thing is a maturing democracy. Something good is going to come out of this thing. You just need to learn. So let's not be worried. It's an opportunity for us to learn. That things must change urgently. Things must change urgently. I was going to share two stories, but I won't because of time. Just to put this point. To put this point. This new leadership that's coming now, instead of sitting in those meetings, of trying to craft and divvy up, who's going to get what position. I want finance department. I want home affairs. There's no time for that. There's no time for that. People are desperate out there. They need to hear the leadership saying, we've discussed, we come out, here is a vision for the country. We're going to take these decisive actions to grow the economy, to address poverty, to increase employment, create income generation activities. That is what the country needs, not these people to come into parliament and decide which positions they're going to take. I'm going to stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kulati. I won't waste any further time. I know we're here for a particular time, so I'll quickly hand over to Ms. Stander to give her an opportunity as well to reflect and what she wants to also add to the conversation. Over to you, Ms. Stander.
Thank you very much, Mondi. Good evening, everyone. So Mondi stole my party trick at the office when I greet the staff and they do this good evening and they just go good evening, so you stole my party trick. But I did also want to say that I started at Westra about 2.5 years ago. And I chose Thuli Madonsela to speak at my inaugural address, it was absolutely fabulous. And the reason that I chose Thuli Madonsela was because of her integrity and her ethical leadership. So for me, that was really, really important. So I'm really delighted to be, sharing this panel with her again today. But 2024 is probably one of the most significant years for democracy in the world. 60 nations, which is half of the world's population, is going to the polls. And this is going to have a ripple effect on South Africa. It's going to have an impact on the whole world. So if you just think about the key markets, I mean, the US is going to elections, and God knows who's going to win there, because of course Donald Trump is being victimized. You know, he's got that victim thing going, and you know that probably will mean he's going to win. Of course, all eyes are on that election. It's quite important. The Russians are going to elections, but of course that's a one-person race, Vladimir Putin. You know, the United Kingdom, I think there's a lot of tension there because Labour Party is poised to take over from the Conservative Party. And then in India, I mean, our election took place over one day. In India, it takes place over months because they've got trillions of people. So that is probably the biggest election in the world that's taking place. But I think in South Africa, it's not since the dawn of democracy in 1994 that the quality of conversations matter. I think right now it's really, really important that the politicians put the needs and interests of the country ahead of the party manifestos and ahead of the, I suppose what it is that they want. We got this right at CODESA. And that is where opposing parties were able to engage in dialogue, and they were able to hold the paradox of opposing views. I think for me, the most important thing, and I can't say this enough, is that business and civil society need to take up their roles. For me, I think it's really, really important. It's a bit like a tricycle. So it's a tricycle where civil society, business, and government impact the future of the country. We cannot leave it as citizens, as business people. We cannot leave it to government alone. We've done that for too long, and I think that we need to guard our democracy jealously. I do want to, I think, maybe just comment on the fact, yes, I'm going to need one of those. I do need to comment on the fact that our elections were free and fair. And I think one of the previous speakers spoke about the fact that, thankfully, there's no big fight over, it's free and fair. And we really, really do have to give ourselves a pat on the back for that. But I do want to come back to a little bit more specifically on civil society. We have to take our role. We cannot sit on the sideline and watch our country fall apart. We simply cannot. I was saying to people that, if I go into politics or if I become an activist again, then it will be because we need to, and I think we need to do that. When it comes to business, I'm pleased that business is coming to the party. There's been some work happening through NECOM, where there's a look at Eskom and trying to resolve the energy crisis. There's the National Logistics Crisis Committee, where the private sector is also looking at dealing with some of the issues at Transnet. And then, of course, there's a committee looking after crime and corruption. So that is where the public and the private sector are working together in partnership. I feel that, or I believe that private sector participation is the new normal, and that the private sector needs to redefine the way that they engage with government. It's an equal relationship between the private sector, government, and civil society, and we've got to take our roles. And I think that is quite important. When it comes to government, what I'd like to see is visionary, ethical, and accountable leadership. And I think we need to hold government accountable, and to some extent we have. And I think that's great. Obviously, the way that the elections affect the economy, I think, that is going to be something that we need to consider. But if you look at, what's happening globally and some of the global political risks, then geopolitics is actually the biggest risks impacting the global economy at the moment. So you've got, the United States imploding, within itself. The Middle East is in a very difficult situation. There's the Russia-Ukraine war. There's a whole lot of, I suppose, geopolitical uncertainty at the moment, and we will see how that plays out. But coming back to South Africa, obviously the future is coalitions, and we're going to need to figure out how that works. I'm confident that we're resilient, and I think that if we hold government accountable, then it certainly can work. We haven't had a good track record to date. If you look at coalition governments around the country, Gauteng is the heartland of the country, of the economy, but it is struggling. Services are not being delivered. And this is because coalitions have not worked yet. But so there's a lot of work. And I think that we probably have to prepare for a tough couple of weeks, months, and probably years. But I'm quite certain we will get through it. Of course, some of the earlier speakers have spoken about the political climate is impact markets, and we've already seen the rand, being really, really volatile. In equity indices have experienced declines, so we're already seeing it. But I'm confident that South Africa is resilient. We've got a strong constitution with entrenched rights. We've got an independent judiciary, an independent constitutional court, free media, strong institutions like the Reserve Bank, Treasury, South African Revenue Services. We've got a well-regulated financial sector, and there is more engagement from the private sector. I don't feel civil society is in the place where it needs to be. We need to work on that. We've all spoken about some of the possible coalitions. Some are more appealing to the markets. Some are more appealing to the constituents. I do feel that the single biggest risk for South Africa and for the Western Cape is poverty and unemployment. And economic growth is not enough. It needs to be inclusive economic growth. But I think fundamentally we need to grow the pie. And in order to grow the pie, we are going to need visionary leadership. We're going to need good governance. We're going to need a competent administration that is able to deliver, but that is also innovative. We are going to need that collaboration between the public and the private sectors. It's absolutely critical. We need it. And then we are going to have to focus on some of those industries which absorb young people and which absorbs people with lower skill levels. And certainly if I look at just the Western Cape, the two sectors that are doing that, the one is tourism. And we've seen that a lot of young people are able to be employed in that sector. And then also business process outsourcing, which is your call centers. I mean, it is growing in the Western Cape. It is absolutely fantastic. And so what we have seen is that, there is a little bit of a tapering off of unemployment in the province. But there's a lot of work to do. So I just want to throw in that, you mentioned that Sandiso is a member of your committee. And Sandiso and I are very proud that we have absorbed 17 interns into Westgrow. And we've absorbed them across the agency. And you will not believe the quality and the talent that we've managed to find. Graduates from Stellenbosch, graduates from UCT, graduates from UWC, Cape, CPUT. Fantastic set of people that are being exposed to the world of work, and we're going to have to do more of that. I was an intern many years ago, and I'm absolutely passionate about making sure that wherever I go, there are interns. And we need to make sure that we all do that. because our young people need to be employed. I cannot believe the levels of unemployment. You know, if you can get a graduate from these universities to come and, you know, it's just, yeah. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're also looking at the time, and of course, we want more time for the Q&A as well. So we allowed our panelists to really breathe so that we don't rush them. And that is deliberate, right? So that you give them enough airtime to really think through some of the issues. So there are a lot of key issues that have come out around it, and I was just rechecking my notes again just to refresh Prof. Madonsela's points. But there's one in particular, Prof. We will go back to Prof. and I'll probably ask just one question each, starting from Prof. and then coming this way, and then I'll open up for Q&A. But I think Prof. Madonsela, out of all the points that you mentioned, I think apart from the scenario issue, which I think is room for us to speak about more post this conversation, but you mentioned the issue of the land and 4%. How do we begin to deal with that matter as professionals who are sitting here? How do we assist government, the incoming government, whoever it's going to be, in dealing with that specific issue? One of the issues that the former president also raised through his report, high-level panel report of Parliament in 2017, this is former President Kgalema Motlanthe. Again, land is another key challenge. So I think, you know, let's not shy away from it. How do we begin to deal with it as professionals, as these organizations that are here this evening? Prof, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, for that question, and congratulations to colleagues for bringing different pieces of the puzzle. The land question needs to be placed in the context of, do we accept the pyramid society? And I want to challenge Westgrove here and challenge the DA government. Is you seem to be suggesting if we give people employment, if we give people employment in particular, our problem is solved. No, ma'am, it is not solved. I mean, as a public protector, I also created a whole lot of internship jobs, which is a very great thing. And they saw the assistant public protectors, assistant investigator. Now at Stellenbosch University, we have 5 interns, and they were being paid 4 point minimum wage by Youth Capital. They came to us complaining that just to get accommodation, a two-bedroom, one room, a student accommodation with 2 beds is 5,000 Rand per bed. So employment is not our answer. And I always say to white people in this country, and I'm sorry, I'm going to put it as a risk. I wouldn't have joined the struggle. Well, I didn't join the struggle to give the next generation of Black South Africans jobs. Because at the time when we joined the struggle, there was no problem with jobs, guys. This is the 80s. There was an abundance of jobs. The issue was sharing this country as equals. Land. So what I would like to see from Westgrove, in addition to is I would like to see, like the Gauteng propeller, I would like you to say how many people like Batu have you created? How many Porsche M's have you supported? What's your township business development process? I love you as a person, Renal. I love the Premier. I said earlier that I did say he's a mensch, and I wasn't saying it for public consumption. I really think he's a good person. But we have to agree, are we rupturing Cecil John Rhodes' pyramid scheme to build a diamond society? Are we walking together that path? Or are some of us saying, let's keep the diamond and create jobs? The truth is these jobs are not sustainable. I live in Stellenbosch. A lot of them are seasonal workers. So let's take poverty statistics. Across the board now, Chair, poverty is now at 60%. after COVID-19. This whole idea of assumption that growth automatically it translates into ending poverty is not true. Because in terms of growth, in terms of our GDP, we're back to where we were before COVID-19. But in terms of poverty, we're not back to where we were. Because some of the growth is that some of the businesses that were resilient during COVID have grown bigger. So big businesses grown bigger, small business sheltered. So we need to be intentional about targeting everyone and meeting where they are. And this land question, oh God, people cried during the 30 days of democracy, guys. And these are young people. They cried about land. So this country is not going to work if 30 years into democracy, our young intellectuals, the people who are crying young intellectuals, are still having Saul Plaatje's lamentation, which was 110 years ago. So what do we do? This expropriation without compensation is just a political ploy. It's not going to get us anywhere because firstly, it's not targeting all of land, but also we don't want our land owned by the state. I mean, it's the land that has been owned by the state so far has not been distributed equitably. So the starting point actually is to look at the land that has belonged to the state since 1994, BMF. Can we find out how was it distributed? By local government, by provinces, and by national? Can we find out who have been the beneficiaries post-1994 of land, of the distribution of state land? My instinct is that it's reproduced in some places, it's reproduced the disparities of the past. But the second thing is facilitate a process as BMF to talk to white business. A lot of people, especially the church-going kind of people, are prepared to engage. I mean, I've discovered that they play our rigged monopoly game these days. We invented a game called the rigged monopoly game to explain what happened in 1894, 1913, and 1950. And I'm told now that church people are playing, the church leaders are getting their own members to play that rigged monopoly game, to get people to understand that asking for restitution is not punishment, is not vindictiveness. It's just mathematically, those who have been separated from and those who have been added to will never be equal unless you rupture the inequality. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Prof. Even on this issue, I mean, we will go to town with it. I think, let me also be fair, you challenge Westgrow. Maybe Ms. Standard, if you want to respond to the challenge, you accept the challenge. So it's on record, Prof.
Yeah, I accept the challenge, but I should just, Prof, Westgrow is not DA. I think that, there was a time when the ANC ruled the province, and, Westgrow works, so we apolitical. And of course, we, whichever political party comes in, we need to work with those parties. But our role is I suppose, to lift the tide. And so that's our mandate, is to grow the economy and I think that the most important thing is to do that inclusively. But I do agree with Prof. I mean, it may not be something we can do, but it certainly is something that I certainly do agree with. Yeah.
Thank you. BMF acting president, you had the challenge that BMF needs to find out what happened to state land post 94, and secondly for BMF to engage business in a structured way around some of these matters. So it's on record. Okay, and Tatukulate, I think just briefly as well, from a governance perspective, I think just briefly take us through the application of your index so that we get an appreciation of what that is about and its implication as well.
Thank you, Chair. I'm tempted just to say a few words on what Prof said.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Because really, it's a nub of everything. I used to work here in the Western Cape, running a program called a small scale farming project, where we would build JVs between small-scale farmers in places like Piketberg, those people that were planting rooibos tea and bohu and all of that. So you would go to the farmer, call them white farmers, a white farmer, and say, this is a group of people that want to learn. So they had a grant then that was called LRED grant, Land and Agrarian Grant from the government. So they would pull together and buy. And so the farmer would then give them access to water resources, all of that, but also the market. So that project was very good up until we had a problem with extension services of the Department of Agriculture and the support to those farmers to make sure that they attend the meetings, they farm, they learn that. And I think there's a lesson here for governments when things like that can be seen to be working. Because you remember rooibos tea at the time, it was sold in Europe. So these farmers already had the market. So all they did was to buy from the farmers, small farmers, and then sell it on. So I think there's a point to be made about the need to support when there are small black businesses that are trying to make it, because people they don't need a handout. They need support. There's already a lot of people that aspire to be doing a lot of things. Now, what was your question again?
Your governance performance index.
Oh, okay. Okay, Good Governance Africa is we believe in an Africa where governments are effective, where poverty is addressed, where businesses thrive, and where everybody is being brought to. We believe that Africa has all the resources, including natural and resources and people. And so then governments and businesses then tend to use those resources. Then good governance comes in to say, how do you use those resources in order to achieve these objectives? Because, so on the one side of our theory of change, we've got what we call government effectiveness, and then another axis is called societal improvement. So our government performance index looks into the local governments to assess how they are delivering on about 8 dimensions. You talk about public services, leadership, management, dealing with corruption, all of those kinds of things. And so we use data that's coming from a number of data sources, including the Auditor General, and then we then rank them to check how do they perform against each of these things, particularly around the issues of job creation or income and creation and all of those kinds of things. So we're finding that like if you go to Bizana in the Eastern Cape, our team went there after we did the first GPI or Government Performance Index, where they performed badly on all those areas. And so our team went in to work with them. It was difficult because there are politicians who did not like these outsiders and all of that kind of stuff. But ultimately, our team managed to get through. When we did this one that we did now, Bizana performed much, much better because what the local authorities need is support, because a lot of them are so encumbered by meetings, by things that are not relevant for what they need to do. So if you remove a lot of that kind of stuff and get them to do what they need to do, then and you also have a situation in the local authorities where a lot of the leadership are not trained, are not they're not qualified in anything. And so they're then decision makers on top of a professional, and that professional cannot do anything because this is their leader. And in the community, you know, the person who works under this manager here, but in the location, in the political party, they are your branch chair. You know what I'm saying? So those things are coming out in the GPI to show that. But if government, local government, is supported, is monitored, is evaluated, people feel the need to improve the next time. So that report, all that report does is to serve as a mirror to say this is how your municipality has performed against these dimensions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kolatim. My last question before I open up for Q&A. Ms. Tander, you mentioned the Kodesa moment, which happened very well. Do you think that this could be another opportune moment for another Kodesa moment in South Africa? And what are your views about that?
I think absolutely. I think that is the opportunity that presents itself, and I think that our leaders need to take that. It's really, you know, so there's obviously lots of talk about the government of national unity. It talks about collaboration between the ANC and the DA. That is, you know, that's popular amongst business, but I don't think that's necessarily popular amongst people because of the issues that I think Prof. Madonsela raised. You know, it's not a part. It's not a coalition that'll work that well. Then you've obviously got so there are a whole range of different opportunities and options. And I certainly hope that our leaders are going to be wise, that they're going to apply their wisdom and do the right thing, whatever that is. I think it's an unenviable task at hand, but we need to make the right decision for South Africa.
So what do you think? Thank you very much to our panelists. Please give them a round of applause. I'll open up now for Q&A. I need to look at my seniors here so that they can tell me how much time I have.
Yeah.
They said I must check my phone. It's on flight mode.
Yeah.
Okay, I can take the first hand while I remove it from flight mode. Yes, sir. You'll be the first. 2, 3, and we'll take the first 3. Whilst I double check how much time we have. But one of your members. No, I won't. Don't worry. Please mention your name, the company you come from, and your question and who it's directed to. Thank you. Bob.
Yeah. I think, let me stand up. I think my question, stroke comment is necessarily directed to the panelists. 2 things that are a discontent to me, which we seem not to be focusing on. And I've been listening to all the scenarios, or most of the scenarios that we have. The first one is that when I went into my vote station, when I came out, I noticed the people who were mending the stall for the ANC. I know them. And all of them are working in Parliament. So I quipped to them that they are actually not volunteers, they are on duty. Because they are the members of the ANC who work in Parliament. And it just dawned on me that these people for 30 years have been under one employer. And their employer now is getting lesser of the share. And how much are they ready for collusion, as my mother would say, and I keep on saying to her, it's not collusion. How much are they ready? Do we have civil servants who've got a new mindset? And all of us seem not to be focusing on that. And when I was still in BMF, we still had chapters in the civil servant. We had chapters in Parliament, I know here, and in the city of Cape Town also. Because unless we begin to deal with civil servants, it is them by and large, who have allowed the state that we are, we seem to be focusing on politicians, not on governance. Because politicians come and go, and people who are in governance are there longer, they outlive politicians. And so I want to challenge BMF then to begin to have chapters and to have this kind of sessions that are saying, but what kind of a civil servant should we be into that instance, and not focus only on politicians. That's the first one. The second one is necessarily based on if we were to take an exercise and ask everyone who are professionals who are here, what is the vision of South Africa? We will surely get different answers. And the old book says, where there is no vision, people perish. And what necessarily means there, it means people will always be now in collusion, because it depends who's loud. It depends who's doing what. Unless we have a vision, a common vision as South Africans. And when we vote, we don't vote personalities, and we don't vote because we are tired of ANC. But we will be voting because we think that this organization, this person, can be able to push the vision. And it's amazing for me that BMF has got a vision, Westro has got a vision, and Good Governance Africa has got a vision, but our country does not have vision. And the economies that have grown, China, the UAE, and all of them have come up with a common vision, and everyone is pursuing that particular vision. And unless we as professionals drive our country into having a vision, what are we following? What are we pushing? Yes, at times now it's a fair. If we need jobs, we're gonna follow jobs. If we need our economy, or who's shouting more that we are following, and we're not going anywhere. We should have learned it over the past 30 years.
Thank you very much, my elder. I think it was more of a comment than a question. Thank you very much. I know the PMF is taking notes, so I won't put the leadership on the spot. Quickly, my brother.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Arthur Mexico. I'm the CEO of Access Network Africa. I'm a youth leader at multiple youth organizations and a proud member of BMF. What I wanted us to spend time, what I wished we could have spent time on today, and the question that I'm posing to the panel is, how can we have metrics put in place for us to be able to assess the quality of youth leaders that we are producing? Because if you take the past 10 years and you look at key institutions like your political parties, like your organizations, the quality of youth leaders that we have produced over the couple of years, aside from me, of course, and my colleagues sitting there, has really declined, right? So we can't speak about the future of South Africa without speaking about where we are in terms of the youth leadership, so that we can start tackling this very issue of sustainability that we have in South African leadership. So, what are the metrics that we can use to look at that?
Thank you very much. We've noted the question. My assistant, you had a question, and then, yes.
Do you think it's why people to be let get those online?
Okay. Can you please let in those who are online, and we'll take a question online as well. My sister, your question, and then we'll come to the panels.
Yeah. We're also proud of the jobs that are being created in the BPO sector. And it's something that I think that give you opportunity, you have someone in the department that will boast about it. The jobs are being created. My question is, where are those people commuting to, and where are they commuting from? So when we talk about economic inclusivity, I think sometimes within the Western country we're the most divided province at this point in time. And we have all those thousands of jobs that are created. We've got thousands of people sitting on buses and taxis coming into the city center. So from West's perspective, when do we get to the stage that we actually invest closer to where those people are staying, so that they don't spend half their salaries on all these jobs that we say we need.
Thank you very much. We'll start with the first question about the matrix on youth leadership development. We'll start with Professor Madonsela and her view on that question, and then we'll come to the other panelists.
Oh, great news.
Thank you, Shay, and thank you to colleagues for the excellent and insightful questions. Regarding the need to train employees of government in leadership and proper governance, that's a valid thing, and it is being done. What I do know, because I do training, is that from a neuroscience point of view, once-off training doesn't work. So you need to train and then reinforce monthly. I'm taking my team tomorrow. We'll start playing and we'll reinforce things. So we do that all the time. The National School of Government is very particular about training civil servants to serve the nation, not to serve any political government, any political party or any individual person. And they bring leaders from Oxford, China, Singapore, and different schools of public leadership. And you will know that China is one of the best when it comes to training public servants that are oriented in servant leadership. But the best, as far as I know, is Singapore in terms of training people, right? And they've done that. However, that said, I think it has to happen on a day-to-day basis. What I did pick, though, from the Inquirer is also what happens to some of those who might lose jobs. And is there a plan for them, for what happens to people who are flying away? That's something we have to think of, because a child who does not feel the warmth of a village burns the village down. And a lot of our people who, for example, have voted a particular anti-constitutional party, we're benefiting from some of the patronage networks. And you cut off those patronage networks in a country where there aren't enough opportunities for legitimate livelihoods. So why don't you then make a plan to make sure that all villages, all townships, all neighborhoods, at Tuma we speak about the need, when people give a State of the Nation address, we don't want you to talk about averages. Tell us what is happening in all wards. Tell us about your initiatives in all of the world. And I like to, my colleague from Good Governance Africa, where you're saying you want to work with governments, with local government, because that's where really change should happen. But it's not just officials that are committed to a party political line. I once asked a certain mayor why people in 4 wards were not moving forward. That mayor, he or she, said to me, they voted for the other party and there's nothing we can do for them. So that's not knowing the law, because if you're the president, you're the president of the whole country. And if you're a mayor, you're a mayor of the whole country. It doesn't matter who voted for who. And in any event, ward councillors are not administrators. They don't have resources to do anything. The resources that are given to a municipality are to serve the interests of all the people and to level the playing field. A rising tide does not lift everyone. Joseph Stiglitz tells us that, Amartya Sen tells us that. A rising tide throws people off board if they're not anchored. So what we need is to make sure that we build capabilities, we remove barriers to make sure that honestly everyone rises. But in a country where other people have been held back or thrown off board, deliberately bring them back on board, and that should be taught to civil servants. I must say, to the extent he can do it, despite his party, the Premier of the Western Cape does try his best. Lastly, how do you assess the quality of leaders? And that's an important thing. And this is where maybe business schools should go to government and work with the National School of Government and say, we suggest these factors. At Tuma, we suggest that it's important that we test a leader in terms of what are their ethics. And the ethics are there in the Constitution. At least the key values are in the Constitution. Equality, or the achievement of equality, freedom, and a constitutional supremacy and Ubuntu-based values. And then you also have the principles of public administration in Section 195 of the Constitution. So before anybody is promoted to leadership at the highest level, I saw recently when somebody who had, I think, 5 degrees, master's degrees, was important. They said, oh, we've never seen somebody who's so super qualified. I said, this is one of the reasons government is failing, is that they're saying that if you have multiple degrees and if you have a doctorate, you qualify to lead. No, it's a good thing that our young people are studying, but leadership is developed in the field, guys. You can't move straight from multiple degrees to lead an organization. And lastly, ours is ethical, purpose-driven, impact-conscious, and committed to serve, and with 4 intelligences: emotional intelligence, social intelligence, spiritual intelligence, and normal intelligence. Maybe spiritual, we can ignore it, but certainly the first 3 are important. That's what we say at Juma and at Stellenbosch University at the Frederick van Zyl Labet Institute. They do like grounding young people in the epic leadership model. And of course, social justice is one of those values that whether we like it or not, we must work to advance it. And there are no institutions that are funded by the state that are excluded from redressing apartheid and patriarchal imbalances. And this is one of the things we need to teach about. And I want to disagree a little bit with my colleague Gulati about, no, it's not you say, it's the Inquirer, one of the colleagues of the Inquirer. We do have a vision in this country, it's in the Constitution, and at Stellenbosch University, that vision has worked very well. And the Vice-Chancellor reinforces it every time when the young people come. At the law school, we give them the Constitution and we get them to read the preamble. And at the front of the law school, which is an old building, they put the preamble because they want people to know what kind of country are we building. Just read that preamble and know we're building a country that is founded on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights, where every citizen's life is improved and every person's potential is freed. And that goes down to Amartya Sen's capabilities, social justice theory. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Unfortunately, I can't take more questions because of time, so that we can come back again here tomorrow. Bob Kulati, your response to the questions as brief as you can, and Ms. Standard as well, the direct question that came to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you so much. I just wanted to respond to the issue of the public service servants. Professor Somadoda Fikeni is now the head of Public Service Commission, and they are working very, very hard to create, to insulate the administration from the political interference, so that people that are professionals, who are public servants, can do their work. Because now, as things stand now, there's a lot of interference, a lot of instructions, a lot of stuff that's coming through. So they are bringing together a bill so I think organizations like ours, we definitely, because we are working on MOU with them, we're going to comment on that bill. We're going to be participating in this because it's an important piece of work. Even for organizations like BMF, we need to do that. Just on the other question about the matrices. I don't know what the word is. Yeah, but I think it's a very important question. On behalf of Good Governance Africa, we are implementing now a new program. We call it YEG, which is Young Advocates for Good Governance. The idea is to recruit, train, empower 1 million young advocates for good governance that are going to go through a curriculum which is going to include the 7 points I talked about, but also other issues like social justice, ethical leadership, and all the issues that you were talking about. Because the issue here is that you do not want, the whole idea came from the fact that we wanted to move away from just what we call civic or voter education. We wanted people to embrace a mindset of being advocates for good governance, wherever they are in the world, whether they are in business or in wherever they are. So we are rolling that out now. We're calling on partners for people that can help us to develop this curriculum and to train and recruit these young people. We want to make sure that those young doctors who do not have employment, once they become part of this group, then we can link them to organizations and other places that can take them in. We also want to say to the business world, let's not wait for people to be experienced before we employ them. Where are they going to get the experience? We need to take them and employ them and put them to good use. I just have one question, challenge as I conclude for Black leaders and professionals, especially in the corporate world. And I think the members of BMF fall in that, some of them at least. You know, I once worked for an organization which was a social development program for the petroleum industry. I'll just be quick on this one. It was called the Paraffin Safety Association of Southern Africa. You know, paraffin is a product that is being used for thermal applications like cooking, heating, and lighting. At the time, it was used by 21 million people in South Africa, even those people that were receiving free basic electricity. So by the time you get to the 15th of the month, the electricity is gone, even if they had the money. So they fall back to unsafe, energy sources like coal, candle, paraffin, all of those kinds of stuff. We all know that. So then what happened was that when you started to see the petroleum industry transforming, especially in the positions of social, what do you call that, social investment, in those kinds of positions were being taken by Black leaders and all of that kind of stuff. So I got to hear from two of them that says, hey man, when you come in here, the bosses tell you to cut budgets. As soon as the instruction comes to cut budgets, they go straight to cut the projects that go and develop people in the communities. Instead of implementing efficiency measures, you know, some of these people grew up with these stoves and other problems that I'm talking about. So as soon as the instruction comes, they would then go there. Instead of improving efficiency in terms of travel, phones, whatever the case may be, they'll go for the easy to cut. And then so what I'm trying to say is that we must not forget where we come from, even when we're in corporates, when we are in these places, because ultimately the reason for these corporates is for the benefit of communities. And for me, I feel like, and I'm not blaming everyone, but I'm just giving a challenge to say when people are in these positions of power, let's use that power to develop and grow programs that are supposed to help people, rather than using budgetary diversions to kill those kinds of things. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just add one sentence to a question she's about to answer?
You're interjecting our process.
It's going to be very...
5 seconds.
5 seconds. I just looked from the Western Cape Westbrook perspective. She asked a question around employment. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm a bit close to that space. My biggest one is ownership. A lot of these BPOs that I think are being bragged about, while they're predominantly white-owned, I actually know of some that are actually migrating from Joburg that are coming to set up shop here, who are white-owned. And what is being done to transform that space? Because a lot of them are UK invested businesses. But while our people are getting employed, none of these, at least I don't know of any one of them, who's blacklist. What is being done to deliberately address ownership in the BPO space? The Western Cape. That's just.
Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like I'm answering questions on behalf of the DA. I need to say that I'm not the DA. But what I would like to do before I answer the questions, I would like to talk a little bit about the work that Westgrow does. So I think that Westgrow is the official trade, investment and tourism promotion agency for Cape Town and the Western Cape. And we've got 4 areas that we look at. The first is that we differentiate the Western Cape Town and the Western Cape in the international market. So we play in the consideration space. So we make sure that if a tourist, an investor, or a buyer, a global buyer, wants to go to a destination, that they choose Cape Town and the Western Cape. So we're really, really active internationally to make sure that our Cape Town and Western Cape brand is strong. So that's the first thing that we do. And in order to do that, we do a number of things. So the first initiative that we've got is that we have something called Cape Town Air Access. It's a public-private partnership where we try and attract direct services, air services from around the world to the Western Cape. So you probably would have heard that we had last year alone, we brought in 13 direct flights from the United States. And we connected New York, Washington, and Atlanta directly with Cape Town. And that, of course, brought with it lots and lots of tourists and created lots and lots of jobs. The second important thing that we do is that we run something called Cruise Cape Town. So we attract cruise ships. I think you would have seen all of the cruise ships in the harbor. That brings in really high-end visitors, which means that, again, we are creating jobs. And I hope that, I know that creating jobs is not enough, but that is what we do. That's our mandate. And then with the Convention Bureau, we also make sure that we attract events into the Western Cape, and we attract international events into the Western Cape. For every event that we attract, for every person that we bring into the Western Cape, there's obviously an economic impact, and that is useful. So those are some of the things that we do. We're also working, and those are all public-private partnerships, so we get the private sector to invest in some of those initiatives. More recently, we've been working with the Western Cape Department of Education, and the intention there is to attract private sector investment into school bills. So it's quite an innovative intervention, but the idea is that the private sector needs to pay forward and that they need to also invest in the education and training in the space. The second big thing that we do is that we go out there and we meet with international investors to try and attract investors into the Western Cape. We had a number of key initiatives. So we look at what's happening in the economy and we try and connect what's happening, what the economy requires. So for example, with load shedding, a big thing was to attract companies into the energy space. So we've got a lot of renewable energy companies. There's a lot, so this is the kind of work that we do, investment into water, that sort of thing. We also have diversified. So a big thing that we're doing now is we're diversified. We've got 3 key markets where we attract investment from. It's the USA, North America, USA, Europe, and the UK. And we're diversifying that now, where we're looking at Africa, the Middle East, and China. And we're making really, really, really good progress in that regard. And the idea is to bring investment from new sources into the Western Cape. The third thing that we do is we take Western Cape goods and services and we make sure that they hit the international marketplace. And we do that through a number of things. We obviously market under the banner of Made in the Cape, so it's Cape Town and the Western Cape. And then, of course, we also train not emerging, but exporters that are ready for the market. We train them and we take them on mission. So for example, we will take, if they're black wine producers, we will take black wine producers into market and we will connect those wine producers with the international buyers so that they can sell their wines. And we also run a digital platform where we connect local buyers and local sellers. With respect, and then of course the fourth one, very importantly, is tourism. So we do a lot of work in the tourism space where we go around and we work with we go to all the trade shows around the world and we make sure that everybody around the world knows about Cape Town and the Western Cape. In the last financial year, we had 93 international missions, and we also hosted 63 international delegations in the Western Cape, touching on 47 countries. So I feel a little bit like we carry the Western Cape flag and we put it onto Mount Everest. We go wherever we need to. And that is the contribution that obviously, that's our role, is the rising tide. I think that they obviously, it's at the end of the day, it's about all of us working together. There are other people that might have to pick up the people that fall into the river. So we all have to do our different parts. Ours is to rise the tide. And then I think, just to maybe answer the question, I agree with you that, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I just had a look through my notes, but certainly the city of Cape Town has, and I do want to say, it's not bragging, but it is. There's an important thing that is happening in Cape Town and the Western Cape, and that is that there's a shift from consumptive spending to infrastructure spending. So we're seeing the province and the city investing in infrastructure, and they're investing in it was Nedbank that did a piece of research of the 100 billion government projects that was announced. 60% are in the Western Cape, and it is in the following areas. One of it, to respond to your question, is that the My City Bus rapid transport system is being expanded to Khayelitsha and Mitchell's Plain, and so by 2026 there should be My City Bus. It should have happened a long time ago. But I'm not the DA and I'm not the city of Cape Town. So that is the role. The next time you must invite the mayor. But I'm not the mayor. My job is to make sure that we position Cape Town and the Western Cape so that we grow this economy. And I think, so I'll leave it there, Mike.
Thank you very much. I don't think we'll ever have enough time for all these engagements. There's just another important people who are online. It's the British Chamber members. There's also them online, so acknowledge their presence as well. And there's a growing relationship between BMF, Henley, and now with also the British Chamber as well. So we welcome them as well as we close. And I'm being told as well by my team that as you exit, there's a QR code that you can scan. It's a survey. Can you please take it so that you can give us feedback on the session? I think already we've started to talk about a part 2, so this is not the end. Remember, Henley has got a campus here and in Joburg, so we'll probably do a part 2 in Joburg, maybe a part 3 in Cape Town again, but that is also on the cards. And wait, I think that's the last thing they asked me to announce. And as we draw to a close, I'll call upon the Western Cape chairperson of BMF to give us a vote of thanks as we wrap up the show. Please give a round of applause.
I have a very soft voice, so I'll try to be as loud as I can. You can all hear me? Yeah. Okay, so I'm very soft-spoken, so I'll try to be loud as I can. I hope that the people online can hear me. As it's been said, my name is Khanyo Ngwenya. I'm the chair of the BMF here in the Western Cape. I would first like to just thank our partners. Firstly, Henley Business School, who has been, co-hosting this event with us. Thank them, and also thank the British Chamber of Commerce that is joining us online. I'd like to also thank the speakers that are here with us this evening. But really, I just want to also just highlight some few sort of nuggets that I think we can take away with us from the discussion this evening. From Advocate Smart Donsela, she spoke about that business, sort of emphasizing on the partnership between business and government and how it is important that business needs to work together with government. She also emphasized on the fact that, if business and government work together in terms of the scenario planning, it would have predicted the outcome of the coalition. From Ronelle, I'd like to take away the points around where she spoke about, about accountability of leadership. She says that, leadership, we need to hold leadership accountable, and we need to grow a culture that we hold our governments accountable at all time, because ultimately we voted for this government, so we need to hold them accountable. And then from Patrick, he spoke, obviously gave that analogy of a buffalo and the lion. I think we'll all remember that part where he sort of made a comparison, I guess the buffalo being South Africa, our country, and how our country was under attack for a number of years, and we've almost, went under, but we were able to survive because of the championship and the voice of the chapter 9 institutions that were busy championing that, hey, what is going on here? So I think just something that we can learn from that is that we need to sort of open our voices and be out there and don't lose our position. So I think just to wrap it up, I'm just going to touch just a little bit about the BMF, to say that, what are we looking at, or rather what are we looking to this incoming government? I think for us as the BMF, we are calling for leadership that is sober-minded, that will put the interests of the country before each political party's ideology, the leadership that will uphold the true rule of law and the constitution, leadership that will come with action, leadership that will liberate our country, leadership that understands that ethical leadership starts with good governance, leadership that will act with a sense of urgency to turn our country around and appoint competent leaders in key strategic roles. The BMF has contributed immensely in driving transformation agenda in South Africa. We have been at the forefront advocating for the transformation laws of South Africa. We all know that for effective change to start, we need the right leadership. So for the past 48 years in the BMF, we have contributed to the assignments of developing leaders. And over the years, we have developed over 100 leaders who have gone on to be powerhouses of corporates in South Africa. So that is just the journey of the organization that we have been in South Africa. We've also had a long history of working with governments and corporates in the way that we've run programs that drive socioeconomic transformation. So as the BMF, we remain hopeful that the transformation agenda will continue regardless of the parties that come into the coalition government. We hope that transformation, inclusive economic growth, addressing inequality, and accelerating socioeconomic transformation should be at the top agenda of these coalition negotiations. The BMF is the midwife that gave birth to the BE Act, and we are the custodians of the transformation laws of this country. So we remain open to supporting the incoming government in ensuring that the transformation agenda continues and that it is felt in all corners of this country. We also want to ensure that, when it's being felt in all corners of the country, that the people that are marginalized, who are living in poverty, their lives get to change. And we want to see them, the living, the improved living conditions, and, that they improve, the income. So on behalf of the BMF, I'd like to also just thank Henley, our strategic partner, who has been so gracious in allowing us into this beautiful space of theirs, and have also been co-hosting this event with us. I'd like to also thank the members of the British Chamber of Business Commerce, who I believe have also joined us online, to thank them for their presence. But also special thanks goes to our three speakers, Patrick, Sistuli, and Ronelle, for just gracing us with your presence this evening, and also the thoughts that you have shared in this discussion. With that being said, I also just to thank all of you members who are here in this room. You're just really, really overwhelming overwhelm us as the BMF leadership just by this positive sort of turnout that you've had. And we understand that it's cold in Cape Town, but we really, really appreciate it. And we hope this is not the last time that we get to see you and we get to engage you. So thank you so much, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thanks again, colleagues, for staying this evening. And of course, it's not the end. We want to do more engagements, but most importantly, all the challenges we've taken note of. And of course, as we hold government accountable, we as BMF and Henley must also be held accountable for what we agreed to do together. So that is the commitment that we must jointly make and continue to raise the power of leadership and ideas in the country. As a token of appreciation, I'd ask our acting president to join me quickly to hand over the token of appreciation to our speakers. I'm specifically giving you Ms. Standers first because there's books there, so there's a special message. There's 2 books in there, and thank you very much.
Yeah.
Baba Kulate, thank you very much, Baba.
This is a prize for you. From Andy.
Oh, okay.
Okuda. Token of our appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
For a picture, what happens?
Thank you. Thank you, Barry. Thank you very much. And thank you to Prof. Madonsela. We will send your token of appreciation. Maybe at the next event, Prof, we'll give it to you there. But thank you very much. We'll definitely send it to you. Ladies and gentlemen, dinner is also served. So please network and engage and continue to raise the power of leadership. Thank you very much.